Welcome back to Recruiting Blitz. My name's Tim Verghese. Before we get started, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel. It's been a busy few days for Nebraska. Obviously, picked up the commitment of Trae Taylor last week. Over the weekend, they had the addition of kicker Kyle Kunan. And of course, on Monday, they landed Jace Reynolds, the in-state linebacker in the 2026 class, ending Nebraska's 2026 commitment drought. First off, just we talked about Taylor when that commitment happened. Be sure to check that video out. That's on our channel. Just discussing what he brings to Nebraska, some players that I expect him to be recruiting, and also what's next for the 27 class, how it moves forward with the addition of Taylor. Also discuss Reynolds' commitment on Monday. Be sure to check out that video, what he brings to the program. What's next for linebackers coach Rob Dvorak. At the end of this video, we'll talk about some future 26 potential commits to watch. A few names that could be next to join the class. We've got a busy June ahead, but could there be any potential additions before that? We'll discuss that at the end of this video. But first, I did want to just talk some just after effects of Trae Taylor's commitment, just what we've been hearing through the weekend and coming into this week. Now that the dust is starting to settle a little bit, it's kind of starting to hit. Going into that commitment. Now that it's in the rear view, we can talk about it. But going into that commitment, felt like Nebraska was going to be the pick for those last few weeks leading up to that commitment. Nebraska kind of pulled away, and then obviously secured themselves at the top with that final visit for Husker games. He's been pretty much peer recruiting in the final weeks leading up to his commitment. He's been peer recruiting more vocally on social media since committing, and as you've seen, those of you following along on social media, as you've seen that. Um, well, on Twitter and on Instagram a little bit as well. But we mentioned, in the video last week, he's going to be working on, fellow Illinois native Cameron Wagner, four-star offensive tackle from the state. Nebraska went and visited him. The coaching staff's on the road. Coach EJ Bartel stopped through to see Wagner last week. But to talk about Taylor, he's already started working. One prospect to note off the top, Antavius Ellis, four-star wide receiver out of Crowley down there in the greater Dallas area. He took notice of Taylor's commitment. He's a top five slot receiver for us over at Rivals, top 70 prospect in the class. And I talked to him over the weekend. He said he's planning a Nebraska visit as soon as possible. That could be as soon as this month in May. Or in June. If not, he's planning to make it up for a game. But I'd expect him on campus here in the summer. And again, I'm not expecting anything imminent, but Nebraska's been in touch. They're going to visit him as we're talking on Tuesday. The coaching staff stopping by, making the rounds in Dallas, and expected to go see him out there at Crowley High School. And so that's a prospect to just take note of in the 27 class. Again, like I mentioned, one of the top slot receivers in the country. Had a pretty electric junior season, has been on some radars for some time, but really starting to pick up some national interest this offseason. So Antavius Ellis, kind of somewhat new name to add to the 27 list for you guys. Obviously, a name that's been on Nebraska's offer list for some time, but a guy that I think is going to go and become more of a priority target moving forward. As far as Trae Taylor and what he's been up to, he's been in touch with Jameer Brown, his 7-on-7 teammate, and a guy he goes a long time back with. Jameer Brown's the number one receiver in the 27 class, committed to Ohio State. I do expect Nebraska to push a little bit, see what they can do with Jameer Brown. Trae and Jameer have talked about playing together for some time. It's been something they've both explored in the past. And Jameer's early commitment to Ohio State kind of threw some cold water that Ohio State has their own vision for the 27 QB board. And Taylor and him have moved in separate directions. And obviously now it's committed to Nebraska. So, and I will say this as well, it's tough to move a receiver, especially a top ranked receiver off an Ohio State commitment. Brian Hartline does a really good job of keeping those guys locked in. And if Ohio State wants a receiver, they pretty much get him. So I wouldn't get my hopes up necessarily for this. I wouldn't get hopes up for Nebraska and Jameer Brown, but I do expect Nebraska to pursue. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Jameer Brown makes a couple of visits over the next year or so, especially if Trae Taylor's also in town. Just something to keep on your radar. But again, I'm not taking Nebraska too seriously in that recruitment until it gets kind of closer to that time, because this is one of those recruitments that again, with 27s you have 2 years. I don't think it's worth it for Nebraska at this point to try and push for an early flip or anything like that. I think you just get him on campus, get him comfortable, and if you really do want to make a run here, really push ramp up the pressure, and ramp up that recruitment as he's heading into his senior year of high school. Um, but yeah, we know we're going to continue to see Trae Taylor. peer recruit for Nebraska, and moving forward, I think you're going to see him be active, be on campus often. I would expect him back on campus once or twice this summer. I'm expecting back for at least one game in the fall, potentially multiple games to help recruit. And then he's going to be vocal on social media. I do expect him to um, work to land some other prospects. He mentioned on social media he's working on 27 four-star running back Isaiah Rogers out of Springfield Central out there in Massachusetts. Rogers and Taylor visited for Husker games. They met while they were in town and played a game of chess. If you can go see that on my Twitter account. They played a game of chess while in town and connected on that recruiting visit. And so those two guys are going to be in touch now. Taylor said he's going to do his part to make sure Rogers comes with him to Nebraska. A commitment that didn't get enough coverage from us, just sandwiched in between the weekend, between the Taylor decision and the Reynolds decision, was the addition of kicker Kyle Kunan out of Kyle. He spent a semester at Cal, but was previously spent 2 years at Charlotte, and comes to Nebraska essentially after. I guess bit of a misunderstanding with his major. Cal didn't have it. There was an expectations that they would offer something similar or offer something enough, but didn't end up happening. He unenrolled and found himself back in the portal, and through a connection, connected with Eckler, made a short visit to Nebraska, connected with the coaching staff, and is now committed. So what does he bring to Nebraska? Ball striking was something that Nebraska was looking for out of the portal, and they get that guy in Kyle Cunanan. In his 2 years at Charlotte, he connected on 70% of his field goal attempts with a career long of 49 yards, and went 21 of 21 from extra point attempts. He was best, inside the 20 to 29 yard lines, of course, went 5 for 5, went 4 for 7 from the 30 to 39 yard line, and 5 for 7 from the 40 to 49 yard line. And so, brings an experienced legs, brings another just leg in the room that adds some competition. We saw Tristan Alvano in at Husker games. We saw him through kind of fall camp, and he looked healthy. And when he's healthy and confident, you like the Tristan Alvano that's out there. But we just haven't seen that guy in a while. And so makes sense to bring another leg, especially with Johnny Hole missing the spring with an injury, or at least being limited for the spring. And anyway, like I mentioned off the top, we're going to talk about some 26 commits. Who could be next? I think we could see some movement in the couple weeks because the coaching staff's on the road. Now that spring balls are out of the way. They've got essentially through the end of May, I think around May 25th, before a short dead period kicks in before summer official visits start. And so pretty much until that point, I'm expecting the coaching staff to be on the road. Not only is the coaching staff on the road just because of new NCAA rule changes and things like that, the coaching staff is allowed to go in-home, make these in-home visits. We've talked, in years past, you've heard so much about those last in-home visits leading up to signing day and what type of impact those type of make. Getting to sit down in the living rooms with families, with parents, and impact those type of visits make. Nebraska's going to have an opportunity over these next few weeks. We've already seen some stops. Terry Braden making the rounds in the greater St. Louis area, now out in Virginia, making the rounds over there on the East Coast. We saw Addison Williams and John Butler pop up in Central Florida, making the rounds in Orlando. Jamar Mosey's down in Texas. We've seen Da'Keil Shorts making the rounds. He's kind of been everywhere. Went in and checked in on 2025 wide receiver signee Jeremiah Jones. Jones, of course, that was a bit of some signing day drama, when Garrett McGuire, it was announced he wasn't going to be retained, and there was some confusion, not confusion necessarily, but just Nebraska had to calm some nerves a little bit, and let him know that Matt Rule's not going anywhere. The coaching staff he committed to is sticking around, even if Garrett McGuire wasn't. And so Da'Keil Shorts has kind of picked up where McGuire left off, and built that relationship, and went out to go see him, showed him some good faith. And so I would say don't forget about Jones. Don't forget about these 25 guys that have still not enrolled yet, these summer enrollees. That includes Malcolm Simpson, defensive lineman K. Petrak, Tyson Terry, all those guys, and specifically those four names: Jeremiah Jones, K. Petrak, Malcolm Simpson, Tyson Terry. I wouldn't be surprised if we see potentially two contributors from that group in the fall. Jeremiah Jones adds some size and some real just electric athleticism to the wide receiver room. He could move around the offense a little bit too. On the defensive side of the ball, Nebraska mentioned, the staff mentioned it in the spring, but they expect one or two of those defensive line additions they got out of the high school ranks to contribute this fall, and that includes Malcolm Simpson or Kate Petrak. Tyson Terry coming off that ACL, don't expect him to contribute this fall, but we could see Kate Petrak on the field as soon as September. It's Malcolm Simpson as well. There's people down in Texas that fully believe he's ready to come into Nebraska and contribute from day one. I'm of the same belief. Just depends on where he's at health wise. He played basketball and competed in some track and field events here in the spring, and so want to see what shape he enrolls in, but. I think Simpson and Petrak can both contribute for Nebraska this fall, and if Nebraska is looking forward, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with wide receiver depth at, but I think Jeremiah Jones is a guy that can make some noise in fall camp and can earn his way onto the field as a freshman. And then we could see Dana Holgerson on the road. We could see Matt Rule on the road. I actually wouldn't be surprised to see both those guys on the road seeing some top targets. We could see John Butler stop by to see some key defensive targets. And while we're on that side of the ball, I think Nebraska, one name, if you're going to look at a name to potentially make an early decision and shut things down before summer official visits, Dominic Turnbull, four-star cornerback out there out of Miami. Nebraska's liked him a lot to this point. He only has one official visit scheduled, and that's Nebraska. That could change, as soon as this video gets released. These things move quick. He could go ahead and schedule four official visits while I'm sitting here and making this video. But as of now, he's only got one scheduled to Nebraska, and I like where Nebraska stands. It pretty much stems from that Elite Junior Day visit Feb 1st when he was in town that weekend. I've liked where Nebraska's been since. He told me after that he was eyeing a spring decision. I thought that would favor Nebraska as we're getting into the back end of spring and entering the summer. That decision still hasn't happened, and so I could still see it happening here in the next few weeks. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in the mood to make that decision. If Nebraska or another school kind of puts that pressure on him and checks in and just says, hey, where are you at? Are you trying to lock in a spot, or are you waiting to make official visits just to check in and get a read on where he's at? Because and that's one where if Nebraska pushes the right buttons, I could see them potentially getting him committed before the summer gets started. On the offensive side of the ball, I could see a few names. I don't think anything's imminent, but I could see them just again making an in-home visit, having a key final visit with a top target. You look at running back Jamal Rule, the three-star out of Charlotte Christian. Nebraska likes him a lot. I really like the work that EJ Bartel's done to this point. They've had him on campus multiple times. Those boxes have been checked. He's already scheduled to return for an official visit. And yes, Nebraska's battling NC State, Wisconsin, Syracuse, and a few others. But I like the work that Bartel's done. And if Nebraska goes back and home, I could see them getting that one done potentially here in the next few weeks. Rex Waterman, three-star offensive lineman out of Arizona. Nebraska really likes him. He really likes Nebraska. He's been on campus a couple of times, really likes what the program has done to this point. I think UCLA and Duke are the biggest competition, Arizona State in the mix, a few others in the mix, but I think that's one Nebraska could get done here in the next few weeks as well. You look at wide receiver, Ryan Mosley potentially nearing a decision. I don't think if he were to make a decision before his Nebraska official visit, I don't think that favors Nebraska necessarily, but that's one where, hey, let's say Nikhil Shorts, Dana Holgerson, and Matt Rule going home in the next few weeks. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me if those three go into that home and come out with Mosley's commitment. They've done a really good job to this point. I think he's waiting on a school to really sell him and put that recruitment over the top. SEC, I think this recruitment still favors SEC all the way. I think he ends up at South Carolina, Georgia, or Texas A&M, but Nebraska's doing their best to make this tough and pull him out of the state. And so Nasir Rankin, another one at receiver, Nebraska's battling in-state Illinois for him. I could see Taylor going out there and making that pitch of, hey, I spurned Illinois for Nebraska, you can too. And I think Nebraska's done really good work there. That is one where I think an in-home visit could potentially go a long way. So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. I don't expect any tight end to really pop before the summer. I think Nebraska is going to have to wait till the summer to get their one or two tight ends in this 26 class. But yeah, look at offensive line, look at wide receiver potentially. I think look at running back too, for Nebraska to make a big move in. And then on the defensive side of the ball, like right now, I do think Turnbull is the name to keep an eye on. I don't know if it necessarily surprised me if another prospect made an early move, but I think most everybody else is waiting for official visits. And I know this is frustrating for people following recruiting. We're entering a bit of a slow period. It's going to be potentially a slow few weeks here, leading up to this June official visit stretch, but that's just the way things are now. Official visit season is kind of the final deciding factor for these guys. It's an opportunity for the schools to give their final pitch. I know that's what a lot of schools are preparing for, including Nebraska, is They're using these official visits as the final pitch, as the final, okay, here's why you should come to Nebraska. Here's why you should come to, wherever, Iowa or Minnesota or wherever. It's that's what official visits are now. And so that's all of these guys are going to wait for that. They're probably going to wait and wait for that. But yeah, there's going to be pressure on a few guys to potentially lock in a spot. We could see a little movement here in the next few weeks, but more likely than not, June's when going to be when the big recruiting push happens. And so we'll be locked in with all the information as it comes in. I will say this before we get out of here. There is the opportunity for guys to come on campus. Something to keep an eye on, a trend I've kind of noticed across the country. It hasn't happened in Nebraska just yet, but a trend I've noticed at some other schools is a couple prospects are aiming to make earlier decisions than they planned, and they move up their official visits. We've seen a couple prospects move up visits down south and make those visits over the weekend. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if in the next 2 3 weekends we see a prospect move up their scheduled June visit date and potentially make a quick visit here in May and then aim to make a decision in the nearer future than they initially planned. I know it's a little confusing, but I hope that made sense. Um, but yeah, on that note, appreciate you guys tuning in. I know this was a little all over the place, um, little everywhere, but appreciate you guys following along. We covered a lot of information as well. We'll be back with another episode next week.